Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal, and you are watching the Mojo Story. Justin Trudeau has resigned as Canada's Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party after being in the office for 9 years. He made that short speech yesterday, giving out his resignation. Now, his party is set to choose his successor by March 24. Anita Anand, uh, the Indian origin transport minister, has emerged as a leading contender along with prominent other figures like Chrystia Freeland, Mark Carney, and Melanie Joly. Anand, known for her pivotal roles during the COVID-19 pandemic and reforms in the Canadian Armed Forces. There you can see on the screen. Well, it is an interesting development. There were already speculations that he's going to tender his resignation, and finally that has happened. He made that short speech to understand what does this resignation mean for Canada and for Canada's relationship with other countries. We're joined by an eminent panel today. We're joined by Prabhu Dayal. He joins us. He's a former diplomat who joins us from Delhi. Welcome to Mojo Story, Prabhu Dayal. And we're also joined by Terry. Terry is a senior journalist based in Canada. Welcome to Mojo Story, Terry. Pleasure having you. If I may start with you, Terry, uh, you know, it was expected that Trudeau will resign, but how much of his resignation has, uh, you know, impacted the standing of the Liberal Party? He's also, uh, he's also stepped down as the chief of his party.
Stepped down and he's left the Liberal Party in basically terrible standing because he's left the party in a state where it really can't hope, according to the polls, to be re-elected. That whoever's running to replace him must realize that they are running to be the leader of the opposition at best, and maybe not even that. I've seen polls in the last couple of days showing them in third place, meaning that the Parti Québécois, a separatist party from Quebec, would be the once again, this has happened once before in Canadian politics, would be leading the opposition parties. A bizarre situation. So Trudeau has left the party in a terrible state in terms of public esteem, and the best that a new leader can hope for is to make it a brief reign as leader of the opposition, if they are so lucky in the coming election as to become the leaders of the opposition, and then perhaps come to triumph in a subsequent election. But that may not happen for 4 or 5 years. So it's a long road to come back from the defeat that is now staring them in the face.
Right, but his exit, will it help the party, or it's not going to make much of a difference since he was popular within the party circles?
I don't think it'll make much difference because it's not just Trudeau that has fallen in public esteem. The public has lost confidence in the Liberal Party and in the Liberal cabinet ministers. There's no way to inoculate the party from the bad odor. And this all started, last summer when the Liberal Party lost a couple of seats in Parliament that it should inevitably have won. It should, these were Liberal strongholds, supposedly. That told you that it wasn't a vote on the Prime Minister; it was a vote on the local MP's position. And the fact that they were both lost, that sent a clear message that the voters don't like the Liberals, not just the Liberal leader.
Right. That's an important point to make. Prabhu Dayal, we've seen Justin Trudeau stood up in the parliament in September 2023. He said that agents of the government of India were responsible for the assassination of Niger. And since then, we've been seeing that the relationship between the two countries has gone on a downward spiral. Do you think with Trudeau's exit, there will be some sort of a diffusion of tension between the two countries? If you may unmute, sir.
Well, as I said, thanks for having me on your show. I think that Trudeau's resignation could mark a turning point for not just Canadian politics, but it could also have significant implications for foreign policy, particularly in its dealings with India. If the new Canadian Prime Minister seeks to repair relations with India, it could mark the beginning of a new phase in Canada India ties, where the focus may shift from uh, conflict towards cooperation. Now, India Canada relations have hit rock bottom under Justin Trudeau. India thinks that Canada has become a hotbed for anti India activities by extremist Sikhs who openly call for the breakup of India and the creation of a sovereign state called Khalistan in the Punjab region of India. And many extremist Sikhs, including gangsters and terrorists from Punjab, have fled to Canada and they have been given citizenship by the Canadian government. And sadly, from their safe haven in Canada, these terrorists have been involved in masterminding attacks against India. Now, the relations, as you mentioned, further deteriorated to an all time low after Justin Trudeau made the election in September 2023 that Indian government officials were behind the assassination of a pro Khalistani separatist Sikh, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And these allegations have been repeated by Canada many times, but India has said that no proof has been given to substantiate these allegations. So now, if the new Canadian Prime Minister follows Trudeau's policies and aligns with them, tensions may persist, and possibly the diplomatic dispute could escalate further. However, the shift in leadership opens the possibility of a change in tone. And if the new leader seeks to repair relations with India, it could mark the beginning of a new phase in Canada India ties, where the focus may shift from cooperation towards cooperation rather than conflict, as I said earlier. And that is my hope.
Right. Terry, priorities, Prabhu Dayal, he was talking about priorities. What priorities do Canadians expect from the successor of Trudeau, given the current challenge that the country is facing?
Well, obviously, you look around the world and you see that voters in democratic countries everywhere are having this crisis of faith. That they've had it with wokeism, they've had it with immigration, they've had it with high prices at the gasoline pump and at the grocery store. They're concerned about economic issues and inflation principally, and Canada is no exception to that. However, on the overseas, on the global scene, Canada has really got itself into a pickle because of the dispute that Prabhu just described between Canada and India over the Khalistan issue in particular, because Canada has become the world capital of Khalistan. This is the biggest Sikh diaspora in the world, and a small minority of that large community has become very capable of Canadian politics. They know how to lobby and to work Canadian politicians to their advantage. As to the proximate cause, it has caused the relations between Canada and India to fall to rock bottom, and I think Prabhu is correct. There's never been worse, even during the nuclear dispute, going back to the 70s. I mean, it's never been this cold, with top diplomats, including the High Commissioner, kicked out of the country, and then mutually our High Commissioner kicked out, and so forth. This problem, I do not believe, is going to be resolved because of a change in the leadership, because I do not believe that the charges made were originated with the politicians at all. I think Indians have made a bit of a mistake, if I may be so bold, by saying, well, Trudeau is doing this. It's Trudeau's fault. Now we get rid of Trudeau, we get rid of the problem. Oh, no, you don't. it was the police that brought this problem to the politicians, not the other way around. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police doesn't dance to politicians' tune. They don't just follow political orders to, okay, we're going to announce that so-and-so is a suspect and we're going to lay charges against so-and-so because a politician wants it. That doesn't happen in Canada. That's not how it works here. And the problem now is that this is now out of the politicians' hands. Any prime minister who took over, liberal, conservative, anyone at all, would be bound by the fact that the RCMP, the police, have now laid charges against 30 suspects, 22 of them on extortion charges, and 8 on charges of murder. Very, very serious charges. And the police independently called their own press conference, not with Trudeau there, called their own press conference to say that these are very serious crimes, that they intend to pursue maybe more charges, serious charges, and that they link these people to Indian diplomats who were then kicked out of the country and were named as persons of interest. Now, this is a very serious matter, which, as I say, is out of the hands of the politicians. It's not within the new Prime Minister's control to just make it all go away. He can't say to the court or to the police, just drop it, be done with it, forget it, leave the Indians alone. Let's not have any charges laid in a murder case. I don't think it's not even plausible on its face. So I'm sorry for the long answer, but I think this is a serious matter, and I think Indians have not quite grasped that fundamental of Canadian politics, that this is out of hands. No politician can get you off the hook. If the RCMP can make their charges stick, then tough. You're gonna have to deal with that. It's not Trudeau's fault.
Prabhu Dayal, is it a mistake to have put the blame entirely on Justin Trudeau's door step? For the simple reason that we have been discussing in the past is that the Khalistani separatists have infiltrated the system so much. They're everywhere, as Terry was also pointing out. They're strong at lobbying. They are everywhere in all the sections of the society. How does it matter if Trudeau goes? The problem is still going to be there from an Indian point of view, and it will have to deal with that. It is not person specific. Or the optics matter a lot.
I heard Terry with great interest because he is very categorical in saying that regardless of which government comes in, regardless of who becomes prime minister, it will be the authorities within the Canadian police, the RCMP, and the border police and all, they will be calling the shots, and the government will merely be following whatever they tell the government to do. Now, that is rather sad because the political leadership should always call the shots. In most countries, it is the political leadership which decides policies, particularly towards foreign governments. And if the Canadian government is bound by whatever the police authorities convey to it or want it to do, then, as Terry says, perhaps there is no possibility of an improvement in the situation. And in other words, there is a possibility, of course, of the relationship continuing to slide downwards. I was hoping that with a change at the top in the political establishment, with a new prime minister coming in, there would now be a possibility to revisit all issues, see whether the allegations were well founded or whether they were political in nature. Because there is no doubt, as we see it in India, that Justin Trudeau had been depending on certain elements, including Jagmeet Singh Dhaliwal, who leads the New Democratic Party, and whose support Justin Trudeau needed for staying in power, because Justin Trudeau did not have the requisite numbers in the Canadian Parliament to form a government. So he needed outside support, and he got the
Right.
support from Jagmeet Singh Dhaliwal, and therefore, to a great extent, he was dancing to the Bhangra tune which Dhaliwal was playing. And you're showing on your screen the
Right.
close affinity between the two leaders, their close understanding, their bond. So I was quite hopeful that a new political government in Canada, new leadership, would revisit the issues involved and would take a fresh look at matters and be able to sort out the relationship, because what is happening is not benefiting either Canada or India. It is being harmful to both. We have a thriving trade relationship. In fact, in recent years, trade relations between Canada and India were flourishing. And by the end of this year, I mean, like last year, 2024, uh, bilateral trade between the countries had reached about $8.4 billion. And this was driven by Canadian exports of minerals, potash, and industrial chemicals to India, while Canada imported pharmaceuticals, electronics, and precious stones from India. So the question remains how the new leadership would be able to revisit matters and, for instance, see how trade relations can continue to thrive. Of course, there is another aspect which is being watched with great interest here in India, and that is Canada's immigration related policies. Because Justin Trudeau had decided to scale back the fast track study visa program and reduce the international student permits by 25%. And India was hopeful that this policy also could be revisited. And there is an interest in India in sending students to Canada to study because the universities are very good. There's a great degree of interest here. We want things to come back to normal. But I'm a little disheartened to hear Terry's remarks that regardless of which political establishment is there, which party comes into power, who's the prime minister, it will be the police establishment which will call the shots in regard to the relations with India. And
Prabhu Dayalji, I think what he meant was that it is in the realm of investigation now. It is in the realm of investigation. So investigations will proceed as they are proceeding. I think that is perhaps, Terry, that is what you were trying to say?
I should clarify. There's a difference between policy, for example, Canadian immigration policy, which I agree with Prabhu, could and should be revisited. Trade policy, ditto. There's the whole area of policy, to include, for example, the Canadian concept of freedom of speech, which does not just encompass marching down the street with a yellow flag and saying Palestine Zindabad. That's freedom of speech. Nobody's threatening violence. But posters celebrating as a hero the Air India bomber, the Kanishka bomber, slaughtered 331 innocent civilians, and he's held up as a hero of the Sikh people publicly. It's inciting hatred. That's recommending terrorism. That's approving of terrorism. That's something different. But Canadian law allows it. We allow it. We had a truck driving through the city of Brampton, Ontario last year with a life-size diorama celebrating the assassins of Indira Gandhi in 1984. Same thing. This is inciting hatred and its approval of terrorism, and that should not be allowed. So all of those areas of policy, I think Prabhu makes a very good point that there is plenty of scope for the two parties to talk about these things, and Canada is not without fault. Far from it. I think Canada's response to the Khalistani threat has been a national disgrace for 40 years. I've written about that. However, separately to these policy questions, I'm saying matters of criminal justice, have these charges been brought or have they not? Well, they have been brought. There are 30 people charged. There are 4 people charged in the death of Mitchell. There are 2 people charged so far in the assassination a year earlier of Raghunathan Singh Malik. There are many complexities to this file, but this is not in the hands of the politicians. That's a separate issue. That horse has left the barn. That train has left the station. I'm sorry. It's not a policy matter. to be negotiated between Canada and India, however much they may wish to agree on these other matters, not a policy matter for them to even get involved in, is what will happen in court. And it's not just the investigation stage. These are, when I'm talking about these 30 people, I'm talking about actual charges laid. The investigation's done. And if I don't say it's a certainty, but if the RCMP prove that there is some connection somehow with somebody at the Indian High Commission involved in giving guidance or even money or something to the assassins, the people who were hired, the hired guns who were hired to shoot Hardeep Singh Nijjar, then that is not a matter for politicians to negotiate. They're either guilty or they're not. And if they're guilty, there's going to be hell to pay.
Right. Also, Terry, you'd like to understand when Justin Trudeau said that there is going to be a democratic exercise across the country for the selection of the new leader. How does it happen? What is the procedure adopted there, and how much time it takes?
That's a very good question, because the answer changes depending on who's in charge, depending on which party and what the timeline is. They have these rules. Oh, well, you have to file your nomination papers to be the next leader at least 90 days before the leadership convention votes. Whoa, wait a minute. That's not going to work, because 90 days is beyond the time at which Parliament will come back after the suspension that Trudeau has agreed with the Governor General, and the government will be destroyed. The government will have fallen by the end of March. There's also a fiscal deadline on spending to keep the lights on in the government by the end of March. That has to be decided. So the government is kaput, finished at the end of March anyway. So you don't have 90 days, but the rules are made by the parties themselves, by the party executives, by the members of Parliament. And who can vote? Well, maybe you just have to be 14 years old and claim that you live in Canada. You don't even have to be a citizen, as far as I can tell. It's a mess. The jumble of rules, which are all flexible and can all be changed depending on who's asking, is an absolute mess. But in the end, somebody, presumably, will inherit this poison chalice. Somebody will inherit the unwanted job of being leader of a losing party in the election which follows. And that's why I say there's going to be a long road for that new leader.
But the new leader you talked about, how do you perceive the potential leadership of Anita Anand, other contenders, Chrystia Freeland, in shaping Canada's, global position?
Made it in Britain, didn't he? I mean, it would be extremely interesting to have a little bit of a new face, a little bit of diversity at the top levels of the government. Why not? And she has acquitted herself extremely well as a minister. However, she's not in the top three even at the moment in terms of the early polling. It's a small poll. I won't go on about it, but I mean, it's fairly reliable by a reputable company, and it puts Chrystia Freeland in the lead as the number one candidate to replace Trudeau. She's the one who slapped him in the face by quitting December 16th with a stinging resignation letter accusing him basically of being a lightweight. And after that, then Mark Carney is probably number two, according to these polls. But they're both in the mid to low 20s. So you can't put too much store by it. But she's certainly a front runner, if not the front runner. And so is Mark Carney. And then after that, don't forget, you may not know this name, but Dominic LeBlanc, a close, lifelong friend of Justin Trudeau, and a very capable politician in his own right. He's sort of the minister of everything. Anything goes wrong, he'll take over your ministry. He did it in finance when Chrystia Freeland quit. He's also a strong contender. And after that, there's a list of also Rams, any one of whom could surge to the front if they could pull it off. But it's a fairly open race. And some of those putting their names forward may surprise us. So Christy Clark, you may say, who's Christy Clark? She's not even a member of Parliament. But she was the premier of the mighty province of British Columbia. So look out for Christy Clark. I know her, and she's a tough customer. So it's going to be an interesting race for Canadians, but for Indians, you can probably sleep through it. Okay, we'll let you know who wins.
Right. We spoke about the potential impact on India-Canada relationship, but leadership change. Uh, what about other countries like the US? We heard that we've seen those statements of Donald Trump. He's going to take over as the president of the US. It will have implications of other countries also, or the foreign policy does not change because
Yeah. Canada's foreign policy never really changes. Our policy is to get along with the United States if we possibly can. And at the moment, we possibly can't, because Trump's decided to basically declare economic war on his largest trading partner and closest traditional friend of the United States. It's nuts. It's crazy. It's self-destructive. It won't do the United States any good to put 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports, particularly since he tried the same thing when he was president the first time around, and Canada retaliated rather cleverly by imposing retaliatory tariffs on carefully selected industries to include, for example, prominent donors to Mr. Trump's campaign. Ouch! So when they started to scream, suddenly the attitude changed. So it remains to be seen. A lot can go wrong, but the Canadians have some experience, let's put it that way, in dealing with the mighty Goliath that lives next door. You know what they say? It's like a mouse sleeping with an elephant. The elephant sneezes and the mouse catches a cold. At every twitch in the elephant's tail, we feel, ow, we feel the pain. But this game is only just beginning, and we will see what pain Canada can impose by way of retaliatory tariffs, and also to demonstrate that they are tightening up the border, which is what President Trump, the incoming President Trump, has demanded as a price for relief on the tariff. We shall see.
It'll be interesting to watch how that equation develops. But finally, in the end, Justin Trudeau has resigned. How do we remember the biggest policy failure and biggest sort of something that he did makes him stand out from the rest of the people before him?
If you ask him, he'll say, well, what about the child benefit? He's outraged that he doesn't get more credit for this minor adjustment. But I'm afraid to say that many Canadians will remember him for something else, and that is a series of small but embarrassing scandals. Going on holiday to the Aga Khan's luxurious vacation home and not declaring the trip, which was a violation of the rules. That was extremely naughty. It's not a huge deal, but it's the sort of thing that voters really don't like. And there are other cases where he tried to tinker with the justice system and got his fingers burned and lost a couple of important cabinet ministers, female cabinet ministers. And this was a prime minister who said that he's a feminist, he's going to promote women. Yeah, well, that didn't work out very well in that case. So he will be remembered, I'm afraid, for a series of smaller scandals, you might say, that eat away at his standing with Canadian voters.
He'll be remembered for his smaller scandals. That's a very interesting take. But Justin Trudeau ruled the country for 9 years, 9 long years. And in the end, he had that back and forth with India. Some said that he tried to deflect his problems by focusing so much on India. He put that entire weight behind that narrative.
Just a brief comment on that.
Yeah.
It wasn't Trudeau's initiative to murder somebody in Canada, to murder a Canadian in Canada.
Right.
Trudeau reacted to that, as any prime minister probably would. There might be a prime minister theoretically out there who would say, in response to news from the police that foreign agents had been involved in the assassination of a Canadian citizen in Canada, who would say, "Oh, I don't care. Kill. I never liked the guy anyway. Go ahead, fire away. Canada's open season. You're welcome to come to Canada as foreign assassins and kill Canadians." Well, I don't think such a prime minister exists. I think that he responded to that fact that was presented to him. But this is often confused by many Indians that I speak to, talk as though it was Trudeau's idea to precipitate a quarrel with India. I don't know how that would benefit him. I mean, it doesn't make sense in the first place. But in the second place, he responded to an event. The event was not a response to his reaction. That's getting the cause and effect mixed up. So it seems to me that Indians need to rethink this as well as Canadians. Canadians need to rethink their lamentable failure to confront the Khalistani menace, to deal with the needed changes in legislation to address legitimate complaints by India, going back 40 years. And it's well past time for us to do that. And there are many other issues that could be addressed. Prabhu mentioned immigration. He's right about that. But I don't think that we can confuse cause and effect in the Nijar case.
Right.
Trudeau's reaction was a reaction to an event. It wasn't the cause. It was the effect.
Right. And we'll have to leave it here. But thanks so much, Terry, for joining us, and to Prabhu Dayal, who left a short while ago. Thanks to both our panelists for joining us, and thanks to our viewers for watching the Mojo Story.
Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.